Hi, and thank you for checking out my first ever video. I've been watching everybody's video responses to Ethony's 31 Days of Tarot video challenge, and I thought, you know, that is something I'd really like to do because I love tarot. It's been a big part of my life for a long time. So you probably know what it's all about. If you don't, I'll put some details in the down bar. So without further ado, let's get on. So I'm going to read from my notes here. What was your first introduction to tarot that made an impact? Well, I was very into all things woo-woo from a young age, and I was also very into reading. So I would hang out at my local library and take out every single book in the woo-woo section, and eventually I must have stumbled across something to do with tarot, and I was like, oh wow, what fortune telling? Like, really? Like, cool! I wanted to do that. That was very intriguing, very exciting. But you know, I was in my early teens. This was like long before the internet and easy access to, you know, tarot decks and that sort of thing. So it wasn't really going to go anywhere for a while. And one day, I sort of tentatively mentioned to my mother that I was kind of maybe a little bit interested in tarot, and her shoulders just kind of slumped. And she said, "Oh, not you too." I'm like, pardon? And it turns out that my grandmother, her mother, read cards. She read playing cards. She read a little fortune-telling deck called a Swedenborg deck. It's a bit like Lenormand, similar symbols, 36 cards. It's read near and far. Sometimes they're called Giza cards because they were distributed by the Giza cigarette paper company. You know, a bit like the Carrera Lenormand cards that you used to get. And she also read coffee grounds, and not tea leaves because she was German, so coffee. And I was like, whoa, what, really? I have a grandmother who's a fortune teller? It's like, oh, wow. So that was probably the first thing that had an impact, you know, just finding out that this was a possibility and being fascinated by the idea. And then, you know, finding out that I actually had somebody in my family who did that sort of thing. So it wasn't like totally alien. My mother was a bit kind of, she was the generation it skipped, let's put it that way. So that was that. So that was where it all started. And then, you know, I just read more and got ready for my first deck, which leads us on nicely to the second question, which is, what was your first tarot deck? Was it a gift, or did you buy it yourself, and do you still have it? My first deck was a gift, and it was given to me, I must have been about 16 or 17, by a girlfriend from high school. And I still have it. In fact, I have it here, so I'll just show it to you. It was an Aquarian tarot. Now, bearing in mind, and this is kind of going to give my age away, but nah, this deck came out in 1970. Might be better, that's it. 1970. So I would have gotten this deck about, as I said, 1976, 1977, somewhere around there. And it's in a state, I don't know if you can see it. Can you see how worn those cards are? I mean, that is just, I mean, the backs of them, they're supposed to be solid blue backs. But look at that. They're all worn off. The edges, look at the color of those. That is a well-used deck. Now, she didn't use this deck. She wasn't, you know, she read cards like me, you know, about as far as I was along. And I apologize if I keep looking at the wrong part of the screen. My little lens thingy is over there, but obviously I'm checking myself out. Anyway, she didn't get them in this state. So whoever got them in this state had to have done it in 7 years or less. They must have been a full-time card reader, because these are just tapped. They're even the edges, you can't see it, but if you put them on a flat surface, they're sort of bowed from where they've bent from use. So yeah, anyway, I loved them. I absolutely loved them. I mean, she'd given them to me. They were my first tarot deck. I was like really excited. I was like, oh wow, now I'm going to be able to tell fortunes. This is really great. And I used them. I used them because that was all I could get for a long time, you know. But they never, I don't know, the images just don't do it for me. The style is just not my style at all. So of course you're going to laugh when I tell you what deck I do have. So anyway, I used these until I could get my own deck, and then, practical-minded that I am, bearing in mind that all the books in those days, and I mean that was it was books, internet, Facebook, they all concentrated on the imagery and the symbolism of the Rider-Waite deck. So it kind of made sense to get a Rider-Waite-Smith deck. And I did, and I got one of the little mini ones that I carried around with me constantly. It's been in my handbag for years, and in fact I had that deck up until sometime last year when I finally gave it away to a friend of mine, and replaced it with a pocket version, which is slightly bigger. I like my Rider-Waite-Smith, and even now I still like my Rider-Waite-Smith. So that was that. And no, I don't buy into the idea that you have to be gifted your tarot cards or even your first tarot deck. I would much rather buy my own. I think it's a much better idea. I mean, as I said, I never really clicked with that deck anyway. So, next question. Yeah, are you a tarot deck collector, hoarder, or exclusive Betty? Do you use these decks in your readings, multiple decks in one reading, or just one all the way, and does it aid your practice? I think I used to be a hoarder. I think I used to just buy tarot decks because I'd see one or two that I thought, oh my god, that's gorgeous, look at that image, that's really lovely, I must have that deck. And then I'd get it, and yeah, I'd love those one or two images, and the rest of the deck would be like, you what? Yeah, and I wouldn't read with them. They just wouldn't have worked for me. Yeah, the one or two that I liked, I wouldn't have minded having up on the wall, as a poster, but the rest of them just sat in the box. Nothing ever happened with them. When I got seriously back into reading and not just dabbling with tarot like I did for a long time, I got rid of the vast majority of decks that I had, and now I'm much more discerning about what decks I get. Yeah, I can, like the images in a deck, but I will look for as many pictures as I can of a deck, make sure there's no sort of problem areas or cards that are like, what? How is that a Four of Swords? That kind of thing. So I'm much more cautious now about the decks that I buy. I will occasionally buy a deck simply because I like the concept behind it, even though I know I might not necessarily use it, but there's just something about it that I think, I almost, like, I just kind of want to support it. These would be like the indie decks and things like that. So, or if it's got like a really interesting, unique system, then, then yeah, I'm gonna have one of those. For readings, I tend to use one deck at a time. I might, at the end of it, sort of add on a few oracle cards or an angel card, depending on what the question was or what the situation was. I might be left at the end of a reading thinking, oh wow, okay, so I'm going to have to deal with X, Y, Z, and then pull out a completely different set of cards in order to look at the energies around X, Y, Z. But no, I don't like mixing my cards up. I think it's a bit of OCD. I see people going, 3 cards from one deck and 3 cards from another deck and 3 cards from another deck and trying to read them all together. And I look at that and I'm like, oh god, it's like trying to listen to 3 songs at the same time. I just, no, not for me. Just one at a time. That's enough. Concentrate. I need to concentrate, even at this late stage. So, does it aid my practice? Okay, so if I'm using one deck at a time. And the problem is that I don't exclusively use one deck. I have several decks that I flit around, and then I've got Lenormands and Sibyllas and all sorts of things. I never stick to one deck exclusively for any period of time. And on the one hand, I suppose that aids my practice because it opens me up to different energies and different images and different ideas and different ways of reading cards and combining cards and thinking about cards. On the other hand, I suspect if I'd sort of taken a good old Rider-Waite-Smith and spent as much time on it over the past years as I do just playing oftentimes with other decks, I'd probably be a pretty damn good reader by now. Oh well, there's still time. How am I doing for time here? Oh, okay, not too bad. So I'll go with well, I'll see how far I can get. I don't want this video to be too long. I'm going to try and cap it at about 15 minutes, something like that. So number 4, what would your favorite tarot deck? Oh, there's a word missing, a B, if you had to pick. 3 faves for those of us who have a tarot deck addiction problem. Hello, my name is Judy. But my favorite deck is the Rider-Waite-Smith. I know that sounds really boring, and you know, if I tell you that I'm a big fan of Celtic Cross, you're going to just switch off right now. But there is nothing wrong with a Rider-Waite-Smith deck. You know, it's got everything you need, and I just love it. Having said that, I do also love the Osho Zen. I got that fairly recently, and I'd been avoiding it for a long time because I'm old enough, I don't know how many of you are actually going to remember, but I'm old enough to remember and have a Rajneesh Neo Tarot. That came out in the very early 80s. How many people actually remember the Bhagwan Sri Rajneesh before he was rechristened Osho? So I had that deck, and I loved it, and I think part of me was maybe it's a bit of, you know, snobbishness. It's like, I don't want this silly Osho business. I have the real deal. But I'd seen images, and more importantly, I'd seen somebody that back then using the deck and referring to the literature that came with it, the book that came with it, and I was really taken with the writings in the book and the way it was laid out, and that finally prompted me to go ahead and get one, and I absolutely love it. I love the images, I love the book, I love just the whole feel of it. That is a real favorite of mine at the moment. And the other one, here's my 3. But they are my 3 faves, is a Tarot Balbi. Now that's a very recent edition. I probably only had that about 3 or 4 months. And again, that's another one from 1975, 76, something like that. And that's in the Marseille style. I should have brought it up, actually, so I could show it to you. I absolutely love that deck. And I love working with it because it's well, the major arcana is familiar enough that doesn't, you know, I just go with it. But the minor arcana obviously is, I'm struggling now. I'm getting tired. So this is going to be my last question. It's all too much for me. I'm getting the vapors. But anyway, it's different enough that I can look at it and go, okay, translate Rider-Waite-Smith. Yeah, I know what that means. But it comes with just a very simple little leaflet with meanings and a few spreads and general instructions. And I'll look at those, and it's a slightly different viewpoint on some of it. It's interesting because like the first 3 or 4 keywords or key concepts are quite sort of unique, and then it's almost like tacked on the end is your standard Rider-Waite-Smith meaning, which is quite funny. But that's great. But what I like doing with them is just seeing what I can get from the images themselves, and the juxtaposition of cups and swords, and people looking this way and people looking that way, and that sort of thing. That makes it really fun. That's a real visual experience, and I enjoy that a lot. So yeah, I've made it to 4 questions. I'm nearly coming up to 15 minutes. I think my nerves are probably getting the better of me now, so I think I'll stop it here, and hopefully I'll take a few tranquilizers, and maybe I'll carry on with another one of these tomorrow. Okay? Anyway, I hope you enjoyed, and I hope you'll take part, because I'd love to see your video as well. I've been fascinated with what people have to say and their attitudes, and it's really great fun, and I'd wanted to be a part of it. So, thank you for watching, and I'll see you later. Bye!